I actually, oddly enough, first met David Blaine at Princeton. Well, amazing. I'm like, I like this. I didn't like this. I think this should be changed. Blah 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 blah. And I gave him a detailed critique, and he actually really liked the comments I said. And he said, "Hey, instead of just visiting kind of as a friend, do you want to be hired to be here? If we're here for another week, do you want to be hired for the week to kind of give your thoughts on the show as we're designing it?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course, you know." And so I get hired by him that day. And, 2 days later, after 2 days of notes and whatever, he's like, "You know what? I like what you're doing. Instead of just being here for the week in LA, do you want to come on the tour bus and be along for the 40 city ride and just keep giving me notes, keep working with me, keep doing all that stuff?" And I was like, "Of course." I went into it, like this could be fun, and it's like I went into it cautiously optimistic. I'm not one of those guys who went in like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna find love for sure." But I went into, but I'm also not a guy going, "It's impossible." I'm like, you know what, let's get on this train and see where it takes us. I was actually not supposed to be on this season. I was supposed to be on Katie's season, which was a season beforehand.
Oh,
Yeah.
can you speak on the reason for the delay or no?
It's let me think about how to phrase this.
One, two, three.
Folarin be ballin' for all y'all to see. Folarin be ballin' for all y'all to see.
No. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go with the Flow. I'm your host, Folarin Okulaja. I have another very special guest with me today, Roby Sobieski. Welcome to the show, Roby.
Hey, Mr. Flo, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
And so Roby was Princeton University class of 2010, but he is actually a professional magician. And then the way that a lot of people might know him is he was a contestant on the ongoing season of The Bachelorette. And so before I actually get into The Bachelorette, which is what I'm sure a lot of people will want to hear about, I actually am it might even be more curious about your time as a magician. So just getting started, could you just tell the story of how you even got started with magic in the first place?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just interject and say I hope that most of you know me from having a beer with me at reunions. Forget about TV, forget about the shows. I don't want to be known from that. I want to be known from having a beer with you. So let's let's clarify that point. As far as how did I start as a magician, it was always kind of a passion of mine, which passion turned hobby, hobby turned passion, passion hobby turned side job turned full job, and here I am.
Okay, and so that's okay. I love that path. At what point did you feel like it was going to be a realistic avenue for you to be a professional magician? Because I would imagine you went to Princeton like I did. The things people get into at Princeton, it's always finance, consulting, tech.
Yeah.
At what point in Princeton did you think that you would want to pursue magic fully? Or was there ever a point where you were going to do a more traditional path?
Well, yeah, I mean, to the point, I believe I was an English major, and I think in my class here, something like 67% of English majors ended up on Wall Street. So,
sounds like Princeton. Yep.
Sounds like Princeton. So even in the English, we're not talking econ majors here. But yeah, after college, I worked at New York Magazine for a while. So that was a little bit more traditional. And then I also launched a startup. So that was also a little bit more traditional. And then I kind of was in LA and I was doing the acting thing. And then I was always kind of doing magic as a side hustle. And then my side hustle just kind of started to spread its wings. I got more and more opportunities, performing for various, important people, for lack of a better word, and getting to do really cool shows, getting to, I was hired by David Blaine to go on 2 national tours with him. So that was kind of, that's when if Blaine is hiring you to work with him and work as a consultant and go on his show, I mean, I assume you're doing something right as a magician. I also got to do some film consulting for various films, the biggest of which was actually Birds of Prey, which was directed by Kathy Yan, who was a Princeton grad herself. So keeping it in the family. That's for those of you not in the know, it's the Harley Quinn movie starring Margot Robbie. I was a sleight of hand consultant on that. And then, just kind of touring around the world, doing all the celebrity parties and all the whatever, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So it just kind of blew up. And it's awesome because I have kind of a job where I get to see the direct results of what I do, and I get to make people very happy, and I kind of get people to feel like children again. So it's a very um heartwarming job for me,
Yeah.
and I just love doing it.
Yeah, and you touched on two things that I want to delve further into. One is working with David Blaine, which I'll ask you about after this first question. But you mentioned that you were a consultant for the movie Birds of Prey. You were the magic consultant. What does that job even consist of, or when you're on set, what exactly is it that they are asking you to take a look at and asking for your opinions on?
Okay, so in this case, there was this character played by this lovely actress Ella J. Blasco, and this character was her name was Cassandra Kane, and she's a little street thief, and basically, so that means she had nimble fingers, nimble hands, and so everything from teaching her how to roll a coin. There's a scene where she takes kind of Margot's business card and like kind of makes it disappear behind her hands like that. So teaching her how to do that, or sorry, Harley Quinn's business card. But and then also she does a lot of pickpocketing in the film. So a lot of that was teaching her how to pickpocket, how to be smooth. A lot of people don't realize this. Most of the top pickpockets in the world are children. They're not actually adults because they're at the right level to grab from the pockets. They have tinier fingers. Sadly, it's actually kind of depressing when you think about it. It's oftentimes kind of gangs of children run by adults, where the adults basically send the kids out to do the dirty deeds, and the kids come back, and the adults collect the money and give the kids some food. It's not a pretty sight. It's not a happy thing to talk about. But that being said, they wanted a street thief, so I made one. I crafted one. So it involved, prior to the film even starting shooting, in early stages of production, me meeting with her a couple times a week to work on that, teaching her the moves. I told her parents, make sure you get good cases for your cell phones, because she's going to be going for them. And I actually want her not just to do it when you're expecting it. I want her to try to do it when you're not expecting it. So if the phone falls and breaks, I just don't want to be responsible for that. So get that OtterBox.
And so theoretically, you and other magicians are master pickpockets, and you could just do it if you wanted to.
I mean, theoretically, yeah. I mean, there's a lot I could do as a magician, which I choose not to do. There's a kind of an idea, but a magician is an honest liar, because we have all the skills to lie, cheat, and deceive, but we use it to entertain. And it's kind of like people are like, I don't know if I can trust you. You're a magician, and I'm like, no, there's nothing more honest than a magician. I tell you I'm going to fool you, and I fool you.
This is true.
And I could use the powers for evil, but I don't. But yeah, so I was teaching her that. And then to give you an example, then on set, I was there on set every time she was doing kind of sleight of hand or pickpocketing, and just making sure that it looked right. To give you an example, there's a scene, not to spoil the movie, but where she goes and she pickpockets this kind of this diamond, from this dude. And this is like, let's say $25 million diamond or whatever it is. And then kind of a lot of the movie is based upon, we need to get this diamond back. And that's kind of a very moving plot point in the film. But as they had the guy walking down the street. She walks by, she bumps into him, steals a diamond, and scene. And they're filming that. And her pickpocketing move was perfect. She was reaching in perfectly. But then I went up to the director, I'm like, Kathy, just think about it for a second. You're a criminal. You're walking around with a $25 million diamond in your pocket. A little girl on a big open New York City street bumps into, or Gotham City street, although I was actually shot in downtown Los Angeles, but whatever. A little girl just randomly runs into you, bumps into your pocket where there's a diamond, and then runs away when there's no reason for her to come anywhere near you. You're right away reaching into your pocket and seeing if the diamond's gone, And so I'm like, we need to fill the street with extras. We need to make it look like it's a busy street so that it would make sense for the girl to kind of, like, oh, I'm like, excuse me, like, move out of the way. Then she bumps and does the grab, And so that's like a small and minor. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're right. They filled the street with extras. And if you watch the film, now there's like a bunch of extras and it actually makes sense. And it's a small thing, but trust me, if that hadn't been done, Reddit would have been like, this guy's an idiot,
all over. Yeah. And Yeah, and that's cool. Those are the little minor details when it comes to movies and just TV shows that you would never even think about. When I
Yeah.
saw that you consulted for the movie, I was like, I didn't even think that this was something that they would need to do. But after hearing your explanation, it obviously makes a lot more sense. Is that something that you're going to want to keep doing? What you want to be involved in movies and TV shows in that same type of consulting capacity?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to say it is funny because you have all these brilliant people who are working on it. You have like about 100 people on the crew, all of the camera guys, light guys, whatever, and they're shooting this, and nobody had the thought of like,
Yeah.
hey, this doesn't make sense, and so
Yeah.
it's a small thing to be there, but it changes a lot. So that's cool. And yeah, I've worked on other films, other productions, I've consulted for. There's the number one star of Turkey's music scene. Like I made him into a magician for a music video, so that's very big in Turkey, but not so much in America. But yeah, no, I get I've done, about like 4 or 5 productions I've worked on, but it's very fun, and I would definitely love to do more. To go back a little bit to your point when you're talking about, what I could do with pickpocketing and stuff, I actually do have an interesting story, which is prior to all the chaos and all the hatred for the police, which has happened in the past few years. There was a moment where, as a magician, I usually work at night, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to there's a thing called reserve officers, and I thought it would be interesting to you have to volunteer as an officer like 1 to 2 days a month. And I thought it would be fascinating to get all the training and the experience. And, I've had the opportunity to perform magic in jail. And as I said before, I performed for some of the wealthiest people in the world. But they've seen a lot of magic in their life. They've flown to Vegas. They've seen Copperfield. They've got to experience all that stuff. And so sometimes for me, it's really fun to perform for people who have never seen magic before. That's almost far more heartwarming, and the reactions are better. But long story short, I was interested in just getting this training. And they also have actually, let me pause. First of all, I'm in LA, and I was like, do I want to go for the LA Sheriff Office or the LA PD? And I asked my girlfriend at the time, which uniform is sexier? And she said, oh, go for the sheriff. She likes the hats. So I went LA Sheriff. And anyway, so I go in, and there's like an online interview. I do the online interview, and then there's like an SAT like test that you have to go and take in like the headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. And we went to Princeton. We're good at standardized testing, and it's like you have like 4 hours, and you need to get 70%, and it's like 30 minutes, 98% later, like I was done with the test. But they very specifically said you can't take anything with you because they don't want somebody cheating. So no cell phone on you. No, usually I carry a pack of cards with me everywhere I go. But I didn't want to have that with me because maybe people might think the cards were cheating notes or whatever, crypt notes. So anyway, I do the test. And then they had said, if you pass the test, we'll call you back and we'll schedule an interview. So I was expecting that. But then right away, they're like, oh, you can have your first interview now. And I would have, so I was dressed in like sweatpants and like almost like a tank top because, I was just going there for the test. I was just being relaxed, and I was not, if I'm meeting up with somebody for an interview, I'm going to wear at the very least a polo, if not a shirt, if not a suit, and I'm like, you have to do it now. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting with this guy, and he's like straight out of Super Troopers. He was super nice, but he had that mustache. I forget his name, but it was like Officer Steve, Joe Johansson, it was like something like that. And he's like, oh, so you're a magician, so you got to do a trick on me. And I'm like, like, deputy, I would love to, but they told me I can't take anything with me, so I don't have anything with me. I would, maybe if I stick around and I meet you again, I can. And he's like, oh, okay. And then I'm looking at him, and I noticed something, and I'm like, I thought of something. I don't know if this will work, but do you mind if I try something? And if it doesn't work, just like give me permission to try something. And he says, okay, sure. And the reason why I had asked this is I kind of had noticed his driver's license. As we were walking, I saw it in his pocket, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to pickpocket his driver's license. But I didn't want to take the driver's license from like the head of the first round of recruiting, like in the middle of LA Sheriff headquarters, and like not have permission, because that could have been bad news bears. So anyway, I take the driver's license and I do like quick move. Suddenly his driver's license, the second I have it in, 3 seconds later, it's in my wallet in the slot where my driver's license would be. And then the rest of like the 30-minute interview, you know, like I'm like I have a half sister who's Italian and lives in Milan, but I'm like her. I'm just talking with my hands all day, you know. So all he can remember is my hands in my face and his face, and that's all he can see. And end of the interview, he's like, "Oh, it was lovely meeting you, lovely meeting you." And I'm like, "Oh, but he's like, do you have any final words?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just thought of something, deputy, which might mess with my application. I have a problem with my license." And he's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And I reach in, I pull my wallet out, I open it up, and instead of having my driver's license in there, I have his driver's license in there. Now this guy grabs it and he just runs down the hallway screaming like a giddy school child, being like, and there's like a place where you had to go and get like fingerprints and stuff, and he's running down there and he's like, "Watch out, you're gonna try to take his fingerprints, but he's gonna steal your watch, blah 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 blah." And then meanwhile, there's all these dudes that are waiting to be interviewed, and I spoke with them while I was in line. And they're like, "Well, I was there for the reserve. These are guys fresh out of the military. They're like super, super by the books. You know, like there's like, you know, there's paperwork." And I'm like, "It says here, have you ever smoked pot? And if so, how often?" You know, it's like, "Did you like," and I'm like, "What did you say?" Because like I live in LA, you know, whatever, you know. And then they're like, "I would never smoke pot. It is federally illegal." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry." So it was like those type of guys. But they're sitting there waiting to be interviewed, and they're watching their interviewer running around like, "Oh my God, I just got robbed." So it was very funny.
And it was all positive reactions out of him.
Yeah. 100%
Okay. He's like, "Turn around, you're arrested," right after that.
Yeah, exactly. That's wonderful, wonderful shank.
Yeah. So back to real quick about David Blaine, because you mentioned that you went on 2 international tours with him. When did you first meet him, and what was it like for him to then invite you to go on tour with him?
I actually, oddly enough, first met David Blaine at Princeton. He was basically, we had a mutual friend, and he was coming to Princeton because this gentleman, or Percy Diaconis, who is a professor. I don't know if he's at like Caltech or MIT. It's one of those. He's a professor of he's basically the guy who does all the math between like kind of gambling and card shuffling and you know, heads or tails. He's like the math expert of the world of all of those stuff. But he's also a magician. So Blaine was coming in to see him. And so I randomly met him there at that moment, and we had a good talk. We actually met with his other professor at the Princeton Plasma Lab, who showed us some really, really cool stuff. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about what he showed us, but it was fucking cool. Are we allowed to curse?
Yeah, you could curse. Yeah, okay. Of course.
All right. Yeah, but well, his shit was fucking cool. Okay. And so then anyway, I met him there. I met him a second time somewhere else. And then he was in Los Angeles preparing his show. Actually, he was preparing it at UCLA. And he invited me down on like a Monday. He's like, "Hey, why don't you come and see the preparation for the show?" And so I'm there and I'm just watching the show, hanging out, seeing what he's doing. And then he's like, "What do you think?" And then instead of just saying like, "Oh, this is all amazing," I'm like, "I like this. I didn't like this. I think this should be changed, blah, 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 blah." And I gave him a detailed critique, and he actually really liked the comments I said. And he said, "Hey, instead of just visiting kind of as a friend, do you want to be hired to be here? If we're here for another week, do you want to be hired for the week to kind of give your thoughts on the show as we're designing it?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course," you know? And so I get hired by him that day. And, you know, 2 days later, after 2 days of notes and whatever, he's like, "You know what? I like what you're doing. Instead of just being here for the week in LA, do you want to come on the tour bus and be along for the 40 city ride and just keep giving me notes, keep working with me, keep doing all that stuff?" And I was like, "Of course." And then it's kind of how it got started. You know, just like an avalanche, little bit of snow just built up.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny to think that if you had just agreed with everything that he had said, which is what I think most people will do, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm with David Blaine. Whatever he's doing, I'm going to say it's all amazing." He might not have asked you to then go on the rest of the tour with him. So that's just, again, good for people to know, to be honest, and to always let people know what they think.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody asks you what you think, I think, no, if it's in magic or anything else, it's always better to just give, you know, like that honest answer. You know, it's even if somebody's like, "Do you like this outfit?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's not your color, you know. I think, you know, but you also gotta be nice. It's like, "I've seen you look much better in other outfits, but this one, it's not you," you know. It's like, save your friend from some embarrassment if you know.
So that must have been a very unique and a very cool experience for you. But so your site has mentioned some other celebrities that you performed for. I saw Jay-Z, Rosario Dawson, Samuel L. Jackson. Is there any one particular story that you remember, whether it was just like the most surreal person that you met, the best trick that you performed, the biggest reaction, and just any one of those particular performances that stand out to you?
That's a tough question. Not really. It's it's I mean, people are people, it's not, I've gotten to see and interact with a lot of people, some nicer, some less nice, but it's all kind of the same to me. It's like I was saying before, like I got to perform in a jail once. To me, that was a cooler experience than, any celebrity I've ever had to perform with.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And again, that's a good perspective, because at the end of the day, as you said, no matter how talented whatever individual might be, we're all just people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But
And
okay,
it's actually like I was once hired to perform for this event, and to give you an example, it's kind of a fun one, for this high-end event in Los Angeles, and this was in downtown. I'm downtown a lot in these stories. I don't know why, but I was looking for a place to park my car, and so I parked it near in an area which I thought was seemed safe. And then as I'm like getting my stuff ready, I'm hearing these two guys have a conversation, and then the guy's like, "Oh, so like you're back out?" "Yeah." And he said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I was on parole, and then I went, and then they sent me back in for breaking into another car." And I'm like, "Oh no." And but so, you know what, I'm like, so I go up to those guys, I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to do a thing, like an event, but do you mind if I practice a few things on you?" Like, had no need to practice, but then I did magic for these guys for like 5-10 minutes, and they loved it. And then I went and I was at this event, and I was there for several hours, and then actually ran super late. And then I come back and it's X in the morning, and I'm walking to my car, and then suddenly from the rooftop of what was apparently a halfway house, I didn't know, the gentleman I hear this voice going, "Magician, you're back." And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "I was watching your car for you." And I'm like, "Thank you, I appreciate it."
a little magic went a long way.
Oh yeah.
But okay, so now transitioning into the Bachelorette, the very first question that I have about that is, when did you decide that you wanted to go on the show, and why did you decide that you wanted to apply to get on the show?
So I actually didn't apply. They found my profile on a dating app, and they contacted me, and then they're like, "Hey, we like you. Let's have a conversation." So they reached out to me, not vice versa.
Interesting. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that they did that. That kind of just warps your whole perspective on it, because I assume, because when you're watching the show, the sign always comes up to, if you want to be the next contestant, click here and apply. So I didn't even know that they were actually actively reaching out to people.
A lot of them, I mean, I assume I really don't know so much about what goes on behind the scenes, and I can't really talk about what goes on behind the scenes. I assume, this is just conjecture, but I assume that a lot of the people get in because of that. But because I live in Los Angeles, and where a lot of the casting department is based, I think it's probably a little bit different, because if they see somebody pop up, and maybe it's a different, story, versus the casting department is less likely to have, to be in Iowa, looking around. So
Gotcha.
physically.
Okay. And so they reached out to you and not vice versa. Why did you follow up with them, and why was it something that you were interested in?
So long story short, I was like about a year-ish out of a 5.5, 6-year relationship. And I went into it, like this gonna be fun, and it's like I went into it cautiously optimistic. I'm not one of those guys who went in like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna find love for sure." But I went into, but I'm also not a guy going, "It's impossible." I'm like, let's get on this train and see where it takes us. I was actually not supposed to be on this season. I was supposed to be on Katie's season, which was a season beforehand.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can you speak on the reason for the delay or no?
It's let me think about how to phrase this. Long story short, false positive COVID test.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And so in hindsight, and we're jumping ahead a little bit here, would you have rather been on that season? Was that who you initially wanted? Or since they reached out to you, I assume you didn't necessarily have a preference for whoever the Bachelorette was, but
I think I would have gotten along better with Katie.
okay. Okay.
I feel like we would have meshed better as far as kind of the way our humors strike, and I think we're both a little bit naughty, and I think that would have been a fun thing. I think she also, from what I've seen, whatever, she tends to like there's like a lot of, the guys on the show were wonderful, but there's like a lot of like the, like, not to stereotype, but there's like Mr. Football Bro, and I feel like the girls on this season were they liked Mr. Football Bro, and I feel like Katie would be more into Mr. like artsy oddity guy,
Gotcha. And we'll get a lot more into that first night. But so, and even just, it's interesting for me to hear how the process worked out for you. So you knew that you were going to be on the show for a while. You have the false positive COVID test, so you have to wait that much longer. What, again, for whatever you can speak on, what is that process from you here going on the show till you actually get into night one? What do they have you doing? Do they have you just, getting a haircut and stuff? What is that process even like?
Yeah, I honestly can't. I legally don't think I can talk too much about that process.
Fair enough. No, that's very fair. Okay, so then fast forwarding to the first night. I assume you're planning what your first line is gonna be. You want to do a magic trick. Was your delivery everything that you hoped for it to be, or because of nerves did you fumble at any parts? Like when you step out of the limo for the first time?
Yeah, no, I was pretty confident with that. I wasn't the biggest fan of the camera angle that was used when I did the shot. So that was honestly kind of the only thing that made me nervous, is I wasn't liking the camera angle that was being used.
Okay, fair enough. And so was that your first time meeting the other contestants that first night that you step out of the limo?
Yeah, you meet everybody at once.
And so what was that like for you? Because again, it's however many guys in that one room, you all know that you're there for that one purpose. What would you describe the dynamic in the room like?
I felt like it was like adult summer camp, like it's just like, I don't know you don't know me, but we're on this weird journey together, and hopefully we have fun, like we'll see who shares bunks. We'll see,
Fair enough. And so when you said adult summer camp, you're just trying to
or sorry, let's put it into Princeton terms. Outdoor action. There you go.
There we go. Outdoor action, which for anyone listening who didn't go to Princeton is when you first get to campus, you have to go on a camping trip for 1 week before you actually move, before you actually start all the other activities. You go camping for a week.
With like 12 random people you don't know.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And from all across America or the world.
Yes. Oh, so really, yeah. Okay, I like that analogy. Except there's no like love interests that's not the point of it. But I see the.
If you think people don't hook up on outdoor action, you are gravely mistaken.
I guess my experience is a little bit different, but I can see how it happens.
I personally did not, but I'm not saying I didn't see it happen or hear it or know of it.
And so
there is action on outdoor action.
fair enough. And so just, I guess, looking at the bachelorettes themselves, when you saw that it was going to be the 2 bachelorette system, what were your thoughts on that? Did you think it would be a successful one? And then also, did you have any type of preference before you actually got in between Gabby and Rachel?
I would have preferred for it to have been a 1 bachelorette system, honestly. I feel like 2 was just very chaotic. I feel like it worked against me because my one moment where I was able to speak with them, I was speaking with 2 girls, and it's not easy to flirt with 2 women at once, Yeah. And versus if you're interacting with 1 woman, then you can actually like be more complimenting her and having a conversation and like actually like trying to get that connection. You can't really build a connection when you're in that two ladies, 1 person situation.
Yeah, I agree. And even just from a few episodes in, it seems like the dynamic is very different from what it usually is when there's just one person that's being competed for, because it gives a little bit more power to the contestants themselves, because they can just be like, oh, if this girl is not messing with me as much, I'm just going to go talk to the other one. And then you can kind of play with the emotions of the two bachelorettes a little more than you maybe should be able to. So I'm kind of curious to see if this is I don't personally think they're going to do it again past this season. Again, it's only been a few episodes and we could be wrong, but yeah, I could see exactly what you're talking about, where it's like you're one guy trying to get to know two very different girls at the same time. Like, who do you talk to more? Who do you try to make laugh? Like, that's just a very awkward dynamic, I would say.
And I was the only guy put in a situation where I had to talk with both girls at once. The twins also had to talk with both girls at once, but it was two guys, two girls. I was the only one, just me, talking with both of them. And I think that was an unfair situation compared to the rest of the guys.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. This is true. And I think it's weird how it worked that even the people who didn't even get to speak with either of them, they were like, oh, because we haven't met you, we'll keep you, but for you only got the one opportunity to speak to both at the same time. So things just worked out in an extremely weird way.
And it's like, and then it's like, I don't know if the chemistry is there, but it's like, I guess it's also because the guys that they do speak to, they were speaking one-on-one. And so if you're having a one-on-one thing, that kind of enables chemistry, versus if you're two-on-one, that's just, the chemistry is not going to be there.
I blame the system. That's what got you. It was the two-on-one system. But then, did you, coming out of that first interaction with the two of them, could you kind of tell that maybe, oh, I wish this would have gone a little bit differently? Or what was your mindset stepping away from your interaction with the two of them when you did the magic trick?
I wish it could have been longer. And then I wish there was more that also wasn't seen on camera. Even the magic trick that's shown. I can't talk too much about what was behind the scene, but that was only the first half of the trick. That's actually the setup of the trick. So I'm kind of disappointed from a magician perspective, because that's not the good part of the people are like, oh, your trick is so amazing. I'm like, no, that's we didn't
even get there. Yeah.
You didn't even see the trick. Like, it's like, people are like, that's why they're like, and so I feel like, just like as a magician, I feel judged, because like, that is not the trick that was the setup of a trick I was about to perform. And that shows you, people are like, oh my God, your trick is amazing. You are complimenting the setup. You're not complimenting the trick.
Which just goes to show you're that great of a magician. But interesting, that is even more of a reason that I think the Bachelor Nation just needs to, I think people want to see a lot more of you. I don't think you were given a fair shot. And this explanation helps out much more, because again, even I was agreeing that, oh, this is a pretty cool magic trick, but now I want to see where exactly it was going.
Well, where the trick would have gone is just for that one is just the one girl chooses a card, and then the card, I rub it on my suit, and the red card is now blue, and then I take her card, put it under her glass, and then the other girl chooses a card, and then suddenly in my hands I had the first girl's card, and the second girl's card is now under the glass that the first girl was holding.
Wow. I think the producers did us a disservice by not letting us see that whole thing play out.
But that being said, I can't blame them too much, because it's hard to edit, and there's not a lot of time. And I mean, even if you're going, there's this like Instagram, like Bachelor data that just like crunches the numbers. I mean, it's kind of amazing what they do. Which she does, I believe. And I think it's just one lady. It might be more, but after 2 episodes, I was only on 1 episode. I'm still in the top half of screen time as far as the guys, which means which is interesting. So, if like you saw the second half of that trick, or maybe the 2 other better tricks I did.
Well, you did 3 tricks.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. No, this is good information to know. But yeah, I think hopefully, and this is another question I was going to ask online. But do you have any sort of hope of being on another Bachelor, like the Bachelor in Paradise or one of the other shows?
I love the beach. I would love to be on Bachelor Paradise. I would love to be on the Bachelorette again and get a second chance. Maybe I was thinking I was originally didn't want to do magic on the first night. I just wanted to do the watch thing and then hang out and whatever, but it just kind of seemed like everybody was kind of competing for something, and they kind of want you, like one guy's going to show his car, one guy's going to show whatever, so it's something I'm passionate about, so I figured why not show it. But yeah, no, luckily Bachelor Nation as a whole is being very favorable to me.
They love you. There's a Justice for Roby hashtag on Twitter. They
Justice for
you.
Roby, or
Yep.
I think Caitlin Bristow started Justice for the Magician King.
There you go.
Which is kind of cool. Or Justice for the Magic King. A part of me is like, I actually might want to like. I was laughing to my magic friends. I'm like, Magician King is kind of cool. Like, I might want to do a show where I am like, I just want to dress up as a king and be like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the spectacle, or whatever. Just do some silly thing. I think that could be kind of fun because I've never heard of a show like that. But yeah, Justice for the Magician King. Even on Reddit right now, if you were to go on Reddit this week and search for the top on the Bachelor subreddit, the top post of the week is literally about me, and it's and I was not on the episode this week, so that's kind of interesting. And then the I think the post in like 5th or 6th place is also about me, so I'm getting a lot of kind of good attention, and it seems there's some negative attention. A lot of people hate my hair. I think they don't like the long hair, and they're like, oh my god, he looks better with the short hair. But you can always cut. You can always, if a girl is like shorter hair, I can always cut the hair. You can't like, but if they like long hair, I can't make it magically grow that fast.
That's not a trick in your repertoire.
Yeah, the fact it's surviving so well at 33 is magic enough.
But I want to go back to one thing that you just mentioned, which is what you just said about how going into night 1 after doing the initial trick out of the limo, you thought about not doing magic that first night, because that is one thing when I watched it I also thought about. But it's funny because I can imagine what it's like to be in that room with 30 something other guys all trying to stand out, and this the war in your own mind where you're like, okay, I need to stand out, so I should do magic, or I want to save it for later, let me not do magic. And it's obviously very reasonable that in that setting where there's a guy walking around without shoes, there's another guy who's shirtless, so people are doing all these different things, you're like, okay, let me try to stand out. So that's just one little like mental aspect of it that people probably don't appreciate enough, how you sort of have to, especially that first night, think about everything that you do and say.
Yeah. The other thing I get critiqued on is that I am, they're like, I was on my knees when I was performing the magic, and people are like, that's so weird and awkward. The girls are on a very small couch. Okay. I believe this couch was used in all the previous seasons. So one guy could be sitting on it with one girl. There's not room for an extra person. There's another couch like 12 feet away. So I could be 12 feet away from the woman, like yelling at them from across the thing. That would have been awkward. Yeah. Or if I was standing, I'm 6'4", I'm a big dude. I could have been standing right in front of them. Their eye line would have been at crotch level with them sitting on the couch, just towering over them, with them like basically staring at my crotch. And like that would have been an awkward like moment too. So actually, by being on my knees, at least I was still like, I think, taller than them, but like it was like more face to face, and it was like a weird. I don't normally do that. It's not a thing I do, but
yeah, no, honestly, I think you made the best out of that situation, because everything you just said, I think everyone watching, especially after listening to this explanation, there really isn't much more you could have done. I think the chips were kind of stacked against you, and so this is why people want to see a lot more of you, and I'm hopeful that we are able to see a lot more of you.
So I know the DMs I'm getting are kind of amazing, so that's kind of funny. I'm getting all the magic sex jokes in the world, and like I didn't even know these existed, like everything from like aloha mara, that means open my legs in Harry Potter language, to like a lot of, I bet I could make your clothing disappear. One was can you be my magician and I'll be your sword swallower? Like it's like, okay.
Hey, but again, I think mostly, I would say a vast majority of the reaction has been positive, and so that really is all you can ask for, I think.
It's just, I mean, I could have asked for more time, more opportunity, because a lot of things I could have asked, I'm like, really, you fucking send me home before the talent show? Like
the talent, that's another thing. I was imagining that when you saw that, you were like, that would have been my time to shine, but you had no way of knowing that week one there would be a talent show. So it's just too many moving variables that it's so hard for you to even be able to last a long time on that show. So I think when so on the show, they show Rachel walking up with her first impression rose, and it was to a couch with you and 4 other guys. When you saw her walking up, did a little part of you think maybe she loved the magic trick enough to give me the first impression rose?
No.
Fair enough.
No, I didn't feel like, like, again, the situation was I had that short conversation. It was 2 girls. I wasn't in a situation having a romantic conversation under an altar with like a waterfall, like making its little romantic sounds in the background. I wasn't in that situation. So I was not, I would have taken it, but I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I assume that's what your answer would be. And
yeah,
then,
I also, if I would have expected one more likely to come from Gabby than from Rachel.
Okay, gotcha. And then so fast forward into the actual rose ceremony, you hear your name get called and you hear the 2 twins' names get called. Did you have an inclination of what was about to happen, or was that really sort of a blindside for you?
It was blindside. I was honestly like, I felt pretty confident based upon, I felt like I was, like, I don't like boasting, but I felt I was pretty confident with who I am as a person, and I was not expecting that. So it was a surprise.
Yeah. And
I'm also exhausted. It's like, like 14 hours later, it's like X in the morning, and it's, it's just.
Yeah. And I think this is just going to push the justice for Roby hashtag, because we wish you would have got a fair shot at things. We don't like how things happen for you, but I feel like we're going to see more of you. America loves you. There will be more from you, and I think everything happens for a reason.
They didn't even mention Princeton on the show, because like that's not something I usually throw down right away. But it's like the Harvard guy, like 2 seasons ago, Bennett. They're always like Mr. Harvard, Mr. Harvard, Mr. Harvard. Yeah. Who does better on U.S. News and World Report? Like
we do. This is true. Number 1, however many years in a row. Okay, so just looking back on the overall,
ever since I got in, that was actually the change. I'm not joking. Like, I'm not saying I'm the impetus, but the moment we became number 1 was that same year that I got in. So coincidence, maybe.
I don't think so. We're gonna give you all the credit for that.
All the credit was me.
Looking back on the overall experience, is it something that going back you would do again?
It's something I would do again, 100%. So maybe give me a chance to do it again. Maybe take me to paradise. We'll see.
There you go. This is the pitch, Bachelor. All the producers. I'm gonna clip this up. And I'm gonna just send it to them many times over until they listen. And what would you say was your biggest takeaway from the experience?
My biggest takeaway,
other than it not being as long as you wanted it to be.
Honestly, this is a weird thing. People wouldn't expect this, but all the guys seem super kind and awesome. And I feel like I could have made a lot of better friends than I did. I'm actually kind of in conversation, with people, with some of the guys, but I feel like my friendships would have been stronger if I'd had the opportunity to be like living with them in the house for a while. And so obviously I regret spending more time with the girls, but I also very much regret not having had the opportunity to kind of do this weird kind of summer camp experience with like the guys. Also, they go to Europe apparently, based upon what they've announced on the thing. I'm half French. All my schooling prior to college was in French. I speak fluent French. I was like, come on, you're not going to have me for that? Like, you don't want me ordering all the food for everybody, So it's that kind of upset me a bit too.
Yeah, fair enough. And then that's another thing where you realize on the show, the guys, all the contestants spend way more time with each other than they probably even do the women, because you might get a one-on-one date every now and then again for a few hours, but for the most part, you're spending time with the guys. So yeah, I guess for anyone who is going to go on the Bachelorette, go spend time with other guys too, and just get to know everyone.
Yeah, and I know that the guys are regretting it too, because if it's downtime, it's like they were saying, like if it's downtime and they're just stuck waiting, you don't have electronics, you don't have books, you want some entertainment, you want somebody who's gonna create stuff. Like, I know, like if somebody's a good guitar player and is playing guitar, like that person gets asked to do guitar all the time. So
yeah,
I expected that. Plus I had a lot of stuff I was gonna mess with the guys too, so I was looking forward to some light trolling.
Did you have a list of tricks that you kind of had planned out over what you thought would be the whole course of the time there?
I had a 50-pound luggage of stuff ready and available to go.
This is again such a shame, because I could just imagine all the different iconic moments that would have happened every Monday night, America getting to see you perform all these tricks. So again, hashtag justice for Roby.
And not just the tricks, because again, it's like I like doing the tricks too, but I mean that's also not the point of the show. It is the Bachelorette, and so I was hoping that America would have more chance to see me talk and converse and flirt and all of that stuff too. So obviously the tricks is one thing, but I don't want it to just seem like that was the only kind of point of being there.
True, you weren't a gimmick by any means. We couldn't get to hear you speak French. We didn't get to hear you do all these different things. You love to rock climb, all these different things that are a part of your personality that America did not get to see. So a little bit of a bummer, even for
even I am, my grandmother had a horse farm. I've been a trained equestrian, and like might have better riding technique than the person who rode in on a horse. That's another thing. I don't know if he's done show jumping. I don't know if he's done a trick riding academy in Prague for 3 months, but hey.
But I have a feeling that we haven't seen the last of you. I think America, we hope to see a lot more of you. And I think this has been a very fun conversation. Thank you for coming on and opening up about all these different aspects of the show and your life.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I hope to see you at the next reunions, have a beer or two. And that everything, it's been a weird pandemic, and I'm happy to see things back in swing and back. I actually avoided reunions this year because I didn't want to answer too many questions about the show, but I'll be back next year because
fair enough. And I'm in New York City, and so I will be there at reunions for every year as long as I'm still in the area.
Yeah, it's a lot easier from New York than from LA.
Yes, it is for sure. Yes, it is for sure. But Roby Sobieski, thank you so much for coming on. This has been another episode of Go with the Flow. Everyone, thank you for listening.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Flow.